Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back.
All right, guys. Well, I think it was yesterday I was saying, I like putting all these different things together in one video. Well, there's too much to talk about to do that today. So there's so much going on just now, on the military end of things, the geopolitical military end, that, I'm going to end up cutting it up into multiple videos today. Because there's so much going on here that to me is so obvious, but of course, I've been like following this all my life and kind of having visions of what's on this timeline, unless it could be changed, and it's going to take a lot to change this timeline when you consider that the powers that be still are in control of so many aspects of this planet, regardless of where our individual hearts are. But we have to keep waking up people to the bigger thing going on here, which is ascension and the trying to stop ascension at all costs. And when something doesn't go exactly as they wished, they'll play another card. And so this is what we are seeing. Iran's largest warship, their largest warship in their entire fleet, catches fire and sank. Right off the bat, my mind goes Gulf of Tonkin. And thinking about, I think about fake banners. I almost said something there. I think about fake banners, if you know what I mean. FFs that have been used in the past. Look at how World War I started. It was the driver of a car took a wrong turn. Was it a wrong turn? No, it was planned, but the official story is it was a wrong turn that led to an assassination, that led to a declaration of WAR. Now, this might simmer a little bit longer, settle down a bit. This might not be the triggering event. It could be the triggering event if more is going to come out. But the fact is that there's so much going on right now, both in the news and covertly, that we could see the ramp up to WW hashtag number 3 is clearly underway. The powers that be are clearly playing this card. And I felt so strongly back in 2016 that this card would have already been played right now, if things were to manifest in a different light with a different person, HRC, coming to power at that time. They would have fast forwarded to this particular plan, whatever this plan's name is.
Right. This is just something that we got to keep an eye on. And I feel like personally, it's in the plans, period. When it's going to manifest is just a matter of, when it's going to manifest, we'll have to watch and see. But we all need to work on our own personal preparations.
Most definitely. And that means spiritually, as well as, you might want to just glance, if you've never really looked at it, what was life like during WW2 for our parents and grandparents? What did they go through? Recognize things like there's rationing that comes through. There's rationing of goods. There's, you might only be able to buy gas, on Wednesdays. That's it. You got to plan for that. You have to make sure you have enough to get through to the next week. Things like this. There's all sorts of things that go on that we're not used to, because even though this world has had so many smaller wars going on from 1945 till now, it's very, very different when you have this major conflagration going on. So yeah, this is their largest warship. Can this be a trigger? Yeah. There's been tit for tat going on, and we've talked about all the covert actions, and we have a lot of stuff to cover right here. To me, looking all through this, I asked Cindy, I said, what do the guides say as far as the inevitability? How could we swing this timeline? And you got that it's...
That flew right through my head, 6 months,
6 months to there's overt, within 6 months, expect it to be right out in the open. Now, there's always going to be building up and different things happening, and it might look like it's now, it might look like, hey, here we are. We've seen that time and time again. And that also leads to a complacency. And there are those that, even now are still taking the mindset, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. Well, because in this country, we've had some major events like 9/11, and, we've had things. And again, let me preface by going back to the 2016 ELECTION. I don't think there's been FREE elections really in the country when you get down to it. I don't think so. I think it's all part of the script. It's all part of the script. It's the wild swings. Loosh is LOOSH, by the way, for those of you that have heard that term. And I saw again somebody saying, who are the guides? Because I guess there's a lot of new people coming to us. And we did talk a little bit more about who we are, because I guess we assume people have been following the channel, which we shouldn't assume, because that makes an ass out of you and me.
Yes.
Yes.
Like that's cute.
So, again, Cindy is very, very intuitive. She's amazing. I feel that she's one of just a handful of people really on the planet that can do what she can do. As far as her ability to contact clearly beings, not just here, but on what we would call the 4th, 5th, 6th densities, even higher. And she can channel, go into a trance and channel, or she can just simply communicate with them. Really, I've not found a time when she couldn't communicate with them. And so, we are in constant communication with our guides. Who are our guides? There's a lot that you wouldn't know. A lot of them are just, people in our DNA lineage, for instance. Some of them are Native American on my dad's side, and some are, ones that you might have heard of, like, say, White Buffalo Calf Woman, which got in contact with Cindy in the past. Both of us have some indigenous blood in us of the Americas, and of course we don't know the true history, so we don't really know, where did the Cherokee and the Creek really come from? Was it ultimately Lemuria or Atlantis or somewhere else? That's part of our hidden history. But then also we have been in contact with many others, including the devas, and some of the devas you might have heard of before, such as Lakshmi and Ganesha, for instance. Babaji. Babaji is an amazing, interesting being. And then, of course, Yeshua as well. And Yeshua stepped into me, and during my time that was in a brick and mortar health clinic working on people, I actually was working on a person, and I was used to feeling a certain amount of energy transferring through me, and then all of a sudden it was as if somebody put their hands on my shoulders, and the energy went like tenfold higher than it ever had been before. So I knew I had a new guide, and that person opened up their eyes and had a vision. They were staring like they were watching a scene unfold, which they were. They basically made contact with their parents who had passed on a long time ago, and they had a vision of Yeshua as well. So these are some of our guides, as well as the one that we call Laurel, who is a Pleiadian, 5th density Pleiadian, but she can lower her vibrational frequency, and we have seen her on the 3D plane up in a ship, by the way, as well. And, part of the Galactic Federation and the Pleiadian High Council. And then we're also in contact with Arcturians on a regular basis, as well as some of the angelic realm. And the beauty of it is that in these times, as people are ascending, so can so many other people have direct contact. And we used to have direct contact in previous golden ages. It was common for people to have direct contact, direct experience. And that's where we are heading again, if things were to be left on their own. And so the dark grip of the ones that control this planet, they wouldn't be able to maintain it, because their lies and illusions would just simply just dissolve like vapor into the sky. So this largest vessel operated by the Iranian Navy, the IRS Card, caught fire and sank in the Gulf of Oman. The logistical and training ship was on fire for about 20 hours before finally sinking off the southern port of Jask. The ship, which was the largest in terms of tonnage by the Navy, sank early Wednesday, Iranian media reported, citing the Navy's second maritime zone in Jask. All efforts to save the vessel were unsuccessful, and it sank after 20 hours of blazing. And if that was, really enough, because of the escalation of things that we've seen, you see a huge plume of black smoke towering over Tehran, as you have a major blaze breaking out at an Iranian refinery. Think of all these refineries all around the world being on fire all of a sudden. All coincidences, yeah, sure.
I know, exactly. These are things that just happen out of the blue by accident. So here they are.
No, it's pretty obvious. This is covert actions being underway. This is tit for tat. This is attacking infrastructure. This is attacking energy supply lines. This is all preparatory work. This is all preparatory work, in my humble opinion. And again, I'm no expert. I'm just a history buff. Serious fire erupted at a refinery in southern part of Tehran on Wednesday. Eyewitnesses sharing dramatic footage of huge plumes of black smoke billowing into the skies, red flames at the base of the blaze. It started at a liquefied gas line in Tehran's Tandguyan refinery. So, yeah, there's video here for you guys to see. I have a couple of links on it. What do you soften up before the big events happen? Well, infrastructure and energy. Those are two of the major things, infrastructure and energy. Here we see Al Jazeera. Military chief says Sudan is reviewing a naval base deal with Russia. Interesting. So negotiations are underway with Russian officials to serve Sudan's interests. As we've been talking about the importance of Africa for many reasons. For one, it'll be a breadbasket, one of the major breadbaskets in the world. And there are other natural resources there as well. And then also look at the location. It's such a prime staging area if you are at WAR. And that makes me think about Rommel and Patton's battles up in northern Africa, the famous tank battles that did help to define WW2. This is key because, the Sudan. Why does the Sudan sound familiar? Well, do you remember back in 2001? Obviously, this country in the world was shocked with what happened. Well, not everybody was shocked. Some people actually kind of had an inkling something was coming, including a person with the initials WC or BC, as he was known by Bill Moore. And he actually called it before it happened, and then he was gone from this world just a couple of months later. Interesting. A little visit from the TAX man, by the way. So General Wesley Clark made a statement, and he had a memo, and the memo describes, and this was before 9/11, 7 countries were going to have to be taken out in 5 years, including Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. So this is why, because Sudan is an important logistical base area, as well as an outlet for resources. So we see here, this is out of South Front, new concern from Moscow. Sudan's reviewing the agreement. So in other words, they're looking probably to get a better deal, or perhaps there's counter offers on the table from the U.S. and NATO. But this is interesting because things didn't go out the way that the NEO convicts had planned, or did they? again, we're led to know certain things, and even things that are perhaps LEAKED, and hopefully AI is not so good at spelling. Um, perhaps there are things that are let out there that are maybe apparently not planned, but are they planned? Think about it a minute. The UAE is building this new airbase. We've talked about this before, to control and safeguard Red Sea shipping. And we see all those, artificial islands in the South China Sea that China's been building, which would be, again, great staging areas during WAR. And we had talked about all the cyber attacks, right? All the different cyber attacks. Well, you got a Massachusetts steamship. Yeah, like Port Authority type stuff. Hit by a ransomware attack. Ferries delayed. And I've been on this one, Woods Hole. Interesting. My feeling here is just it's a probe. Can you imagine if things like this happened en masse all around the country at the same time?
It's going to be pretty chaotic, and that's what they like to do. They like to cause chaos, they like to cause confusion, and they like to really turn people's lives upside down, so we can't really grab our center and hold on to things and grow spiritually.
Well, read The Art of War. Again, it's all about creating, as you said, chaos, disorder, confusion. And this is all part of it. It's another ransomware attack. But do you think it's about the money? I don't think it's about the money. I don't think it's about the money at all. There's a lot larger stakes underway. Much larger stakes underway, as we see over here. And usually I don't like to pull up the tabloid type ones, but this has been reported in other spots too. China threatens U.S. with intense, the N-word showdown as it ramps up its atomic program. We talked about that a few days ago. So the rhetoric is going up as you're looking at. No, that's not a U.S. version. That's the Chinese version of basically a stealth NUKE bomber. And smiling for the crowd, the president for life, and the dark-eyed one. And we'll leave that at that. And by the way, we had talked about this too. The rising of the yuan is, they're buying up. China's buying up U.S. dollars because the yuan's getting too strong too fast. So interesting. China's foreign exchange reserves haven't risen much in the past year, but there are other telltale signs that the central bank may be resisting a stronger yuan. Ultimately, this is again about, there's a lot of pick your side going on right now. And at the very top, there's the strings that come out to one side and the other side. We could say east and west in this case instead of left and right. And those strings are held by hands that are controlling the whole show, the whole puppet show. Yet that doesn't mean that those just a little bit farther down don't understand that that is the reality, as we know. And there's a lot of things going on as you see assassination attempt on the Ugandan minister kills daughter and driver. This is part of stuff that we don't normally pay too much attention to if we're living in the UK, Canada, US, Australia. But, here what we have is, again, this is part of what's going on behind the scenes, getting the right people in the right positions to sign the right documents, to make the right agreements with the right side, so that the natural resources of the area will be available during times of WAR. Mm-hmm. And Israel will ask the U.S. for $1 billion to replenish the Iron Dome, by the way, because they've gone through an awful lot of missiles. Mm. So, and again, that whole episode too can be a little bit of a probe, a preemptive. Let's see how they react if we escalate things up. And this is how we need to be kind of looking at everything sort of semi-suspiciously. In this world, boy, we need to be semi-suspicious all the time. Here you see Washington urged to end strategic error of thwarting Europe's defense integration ambitions. One of the things that when you read through here, and it talks about how you might have heard the previous administration demanding that each of the EU countries spend their 2% minimum of their GDP on defense. And one of the things that I think we're being set up to accept is a certain framework, looking through a certain lens. Because what it says here is that, currently things haven't been working out and it's left both sides weakened. See, this is part of what they're painting. The picture that they're painting is that even though so much money has been spent on defense, the US and the EU are weakened and ill prepared. We've had so many different scenarios that have been projected showing that the US wouldn't be able to stop the Find Anywhere country, period. No malicious code or intent. Pentagon audit reportedly clears 2 China-made drones for government use. Now, as we said before, are they this stupid? Can they possibly be this incompetent and inept? Well, what's the alternative? I'll let you guys put that out there. So, U.S. Defense Department, yes, DOD. Well, they did an audit and said to have cleared for government use 2 drones modeled by China's largest manufacturer, Dajiang Innovations. No malicious code or intent was discovered in an analysis of the drones. So they're recommended for government use in entities and forces working with U.S. services. Oh, man.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Okay, I'm going to throw it out there. Star Wars. Do you remember? Execute Order 66. And I'll leave it for you Star Wars fans out there to make comments on that. By the way, everybody's hacking and attacking everyone online. But Russians are the best and the most sophisticated hackers. Who said this? Kaspersky himself. Who's Kaspersky? Kaspersky? Well, Kaspersky Lab, which is basically another protective layer that you can put on your computer. Think in terms of McAfee. This would be another alternative. So as he said, everybody's hacking everyone, but some are better at it. Some are more skilled. And so he says the Russian hackers are some of the most skilled cyber criminals out there. Interesting, is it not? So everything is right out there. Meanwhile, Isaac Herzog has been elected Israel's 11th president. And of course, their prime minister is Netanyahu, and he's been there quite a while. And will things really change? No. These things are always, it's one talking head after another is basically what it is, but all of them attached to the same puppet strings. Now, again, Nostradamus is very, very well known for his prophecies. And, was he an insider? Well, he could be, sure. I mean, he was tied up. He worked directly with the popes. He worked directly with the kings and the queens and all the upper echelon. And he even talks about the monarchy being restored. And I don't think we need any sort of monarchy in the future. And there are some that will digress, and because they'll look at it from a biblical perspective and say, yes, we need Jesus to come here physically and reign on the planet with us. And I think Yeshua needs to reign in our hearts. That Christ consciousness is what is to be cultivated. That heart-centered, compassionate, loving energy that needs to be emanated from our hearts in order to rise up into 5th density, ultimately into 6th density, and starting to come into that unity consciousness, but not a monarchy. We don't need anybody to tell the rest of the world what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, and to rule. This is all remnants of the draconian, Anunnakian, Sumerian system when kingship was given to us from on high. Yeah, on high, from Anu, Enlil, Enki, and the like, and their system that was brought here. If you look back to some other areas, when we go into the Indus Valley, we have discovered extremely old ruins and relics of ancient cities that were not walled, and they did not have storehouses for weapons. They were living peacefully. They were under a totally different system where the people self-governed. Think about how the term anarchy is so negative. Well, one of the definitions of anarchy is basically no ruling government. The people actually getting along and making decisions. Go back to the Tower of Babel. Look, they're all united. They're building a tower unto the heavens. Maybe, we could reword that and say, and instead of saying the Elohim said, look, all the humans are united, we could say, hey, the Anunnaki looked down and they said, hey, humanity is united. They're of one mind, one consciousness. They're not fighting amongst each other. They're working together. They're cooperating. Well, the Anunnaki said, we can't have this. Come, let us get our asses down there. Let us, terrify them in our ships and our technology, spread them all over the globe. And then, like Deuteronomy 32:8 says, we'll basically put one of us over each one of the tribes, and we could have fun competing with each other. We'll send them off to war against each other. Meanwhile, we're back up on the ship, basically having little sifters of Dom Perignon or something of the like, so to speak.
Right. So you have to actually, when you start saying things how they are, you put certain words where other words used to be, then you can understand the storyline a little bit better and you understand really who's ruling things. But it's just almost as simple as just, a play on words. You put the appropriate word where it goes, in accordance to that saying or that story in the Bible.
Exactly. Because again, it could be shocking to realize that the oldest complete 5 books of Moses dates to 900 to 1100 AD, AD, and then we do have snippets and pieces of books that are BC, just a couple hundred years, but little snippets, little words here and there. And when you realize, that King James, the famous King James Bible, was the head of all the Masonic lodges in England, you realize that this infiltration is huge. And the Constantinian version of the Bible is the one that we have, comes from Constantine the Great, who was a pagan Roman emperor who converted in order to keep his empire together, who executed his wife and first son to keep his power going. And yet he's called Saint Constantine. He's no saint, he's a murderer. Just like with Columbus, he discovered the Americas. 100 million indigenous people roaming the Americas had no clue where they were. They were lost because he discovered it for them.
Yep.
This is the rewording of history, and as we have to keep pushing for people to wake up and realize that if you're still locked into one of the versions that are given to us by the ILLUMIN, we could finish that out, ATI, or which work for the IGI, the GG, under the control of the Anunnaki, under the control of the Draco, under the control of this AI intelligence that's out there in this multiverse, that is an artificial representation of everything that happens organically. Then we're starting to get the bigger picture here. As long as you're still believing in one of their narratives, you're still sleeping. You might understand that, okay, perhaps the politicians really aren't controlling everything, but then you're still holding out hope for one of their other false narratives. Ultimately, source lies within all of us. The true source, the true God with the big G, is within every single one of its creations. And source is exploring all of its creation from every different angle, even the angle of taking the anti-hero or the villain at times, because even when we're talking about these beings have strayed as far as going away. They're moving away. You're either moving towards or away from reintegration with the one, the ultimate source of all. And so, they're on that track that's still moving them farther and farther away. What we see with Nostradamus is that he had talked clearly about there being revolutions, gripping the planet. And this is a letter to his son, by the way, who he named Caesar. So again, how much do we trust somebody who looks at the name Caesar in a good light?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, but we look at it all as part of the script. And, all these prophecies, again, if you look at them as scripture, then we still need to take them into account because, again, these are plans that have been laid out. And, of course, we do have abilities. There are psychic abilities that are latent, and everybody has these type of abilities. And as we move out of the Kali Yuga, they get activated. Our DNA is changing right now. One of our brothers there was telling me about communications he's having telepathically with his daughter. I don't doubt it at all. We've had many people talk about this. We've seen this. One of our other family members, same thing. And since we've started working with them, they've noticed their abilities have gone through the roof to much higher levels. Now that's good. It's good, but it can bring difficulty as we start to have an overload of different sorts of sensory, perceptions coming in. Like Cindy is so gifted, but then she's tortured by her gifts as well. Because, and same thing with me. We had to go into town last night, and I liked where we went, but at the same time, I couldn't tolerate it for maybe more than an hour or two. Having like 50, 60,000 people in the area around us, too much energy, too much buzz, too much vibe. Cindy could barely tolerate it for that at all. It was starting to drive her crazy. That's why we like nature as much as possible, because it's grounding, it's rooting, and it's not that overload. It's going to be difficult as we all get turned on with our DNA coming back to what it should be. Just look at the second chromosome. We've been basically tinkered with, and not tinkered with in a good way. Again, we could go biblical and say, hey, they have the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. They can understand things. We can't let them eat of the tree of life. Otherwise, they'll be like us. They'll have 1,000-year, 10,000-year, 100,000-year lifespans. They'll be able to put two and two together because their lifespans are so long. We got to keep their lifespan short so that they're constantly reincarnating, and they won't have that time to develop the wisdom to understand the bigger scheme of things and the control systems that are in play.
Right. We were just talking about that yesterday. Could you imagine, with the knowledge that we've attained just this far in life, what would it be like if we could live even only 150 years? How many people we could teach and wake up? But when it comes to waking up, it does come along with the burden of sensitivity. And that sensitivity can drive a person crazy and, like Mike said, give people sensory overload. So more and more and more, you need to find that spiritual practice, find your center, find a place that's safe for all of your nerves to settle down, to calm down. Because it was, when we went into that place, great place, nice surroundings, food was great. But my gosh, the buzz hit me that night, and I was in pain until probably like 4 or 5 a.m. It took me that long and Mike running energy on me for my nerves just to calm down. So yeah, the sensitivity is great because I can get people in contact with their guides. I can do all kinds of stuff, but it comes with that. So everything is like a give and take.
Exactly. So, with her ability to like see loved ones that have passed on, which is something she can almost always do. Usually she can see, where they are, whether they're reincarnated already or if they're still there on the astral plane, what they're doing on the astral plane, or, hopefully not, they're lost in this kind of limbo in between the realms, which does happen, sometimes can last hundreds of years. She can see all those things. So it makes all the stuff that's put into religions to keep us in fear of what will happen to us after death if we don't obey them. Well, it enables us to throw all that out the window, because we just know that that's not the case. And we can see the picture clearer. Now, Nostradamus does give us some interesting info. He talks about 3 major conflagrations. He talks, clearly about there being a third WW and a third anti-Christ, and again, anti-peace, anti-love, anti-compassion, anti-force density, anti-Christ consciousness. And he does also talk about revolutions inside countries that will last for years. And we're seeing that going on, and it's coming. It's here now. There's going to be more than one thing happening at one time. And it's not necessarily that they're going to happen one after the other. There's going to be things going on concurrently at the same time. So we're heading into quite a bit of chaos as far as the time. And somebody said, why are you always focused on the doom and the gloom? Because this is where we're at. And they're losing their grip, but they're still in control. And what we see coming ahead is going to be more challenging than what we see in the past 6 to 12 to 18 months. We're going up in the challenging category. So we need to be as prepared as we possibly can be. Keep putting out the high vibes. Now, there is a chance, because there have been tens of thousands of Buddhist monks that have ascended, bodily ascended. Some, there's no traces of their body at all. Others, there's hair and nails. Others, there's a little bit of a body that, you could put in your hands and might weigh a pound left. They've left their vehicles. They've transformed their vehicles, and sometimes in a flash of light, and they're gone. And it is possible for the individual to ascend up and out of here, the individual. But as far as like a mass ascension event without leaving the physical body, that is not in the immediate future. In the immediate future, we have a lot more to contend with, and we're going to have to endure and somehow do it with keeping our vibes high. Yeah, it's a tall order what's in front of us for sure. But there's a reason why we're here, and many of us chose to be here for this time just for that purpose. Many of us have come down from the higher realms in order to help as many as possible, because if you could even help a handful of souls to raise up, then that's beautiful. What's interesting, though, is some of the wording that he's using, because he's using traditional Constantinian wording of things and talking about God in a traditional way. But he does talk about things like the spirit realm. He does talk about things like the power of the sun. The sun is bringing the light to ourselves. It's bringing the gnosis to ourselves, that knowing. It's changing us. He does talk about the spiritual battle going on and beings that you can't see, and again, think in clearer terms, because yes, there are demons, yes, there are angels, but it doesn't mean that every extraterrestrial is a demon, and not every extraterrestrial is also an angel. There are so many different types of beings out there. But this was an interesting letter. I'll have the link for you guys, because according to what he has here in part of this script, we're in for a period of both global WAR as well as internal REVOLUTION. Thoughts?
Well, it's some heavy stuff. It's information that people need to take time to kind of look at and chew on it and understand it, and do something about it. And I think a lot of people feel, as they sit at home or as they're listening to this video, it's like, what can I do? What can I possibly do? It's just me. But remember, that's what they've taught us all along, is that you alone are helpless. If you're not actually there doing something in the 3D, well, you're not helping at all. When in reality, our thoughts, our actions at home, and things that if we send out the intention for certain resolutions, that helps. That actually helps. So all of you who are like, lone rangers, or you think you're lone rangers in this, don't think that. We're all coming together for a common goal, for something to turn out to be a lot better than it may have been. And that's our secret weapon that they're hoping that we don't realize.
And what's the bottom line of what happens? The return of a golden age. So he foresees the return of a golden age after this period of cataclysm. And this is what we get from all the different prophecies, Mothership and the Hopi. We see it all over, everywhere. there's a golden age that returns. It's in the Hindu scriptures. Islam, yeah, it goes on and on. It's just different ways of looking at it, but it's part of the cycle. It's part of the death of this system, which this system has to pass away in order for us to rise up in vibrations. So we must face it, what's coming, and do as much as we can to help as many as possible, because it's all about what we choose to do in this time. Ultimately, we are eternal ourselves. We're consciousness. We're not these vehicles. These bodies are just temporary garments that are put on by us. And yet they do have an effect on our consciousness as well. Every single experience has an effect on our consciousness. So we have to keep that in mind. Thank you guys for being part of the family. Stay prepared out there. Make sure you're subscribed to both channels, have the bell clicked. We look forward to your comments on this. Anybody that needs to reach us, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com. And thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.